I hope you listened to the first video in this series called The Test, where we talked about why God doesn't just show up face to face and make people believe in Him. We're being tested, and it is very similar. And in fact, Christianity, what it says about itself is that it is an investment in a relationship. And I hope you watch the next one on the fourth dimension. It is so funny how people misrepresent Christianity and they talk about this sky daddy when it's talking about a spiritual being, and quantum physicists typically say that there is more than 3 spatial dimensions. And then I hope you looked at the video on the evidence for a common creator and how that verifies what the creation account in Genesis 1 says, and it's just more proof that the Bible is accurate. Well, now we're going to get into the things that appeal to our intuition, because this is how Jesus said we would recognize Him. His sheep hear His voice. So in this one, I'm going to talk about seed. Now, it's so interesting that Jesus said that we must be born again. Now, He's talking about a spiritual birth, and that would involve a spiritual conception, a spiritual sperm meeting a spiritual egg, and the two becoming one. This is what happens in salvation, and this is what separates Christianity from many religions, because they talk about behavior, behavior, behavior. Whereas Christianity talks about there's something missing. You've got to receive Jesus. Accept Him as your Lord and Savior, and that makes you right. And that is going to change your behavior. Faith without works is dead. Real faith in Jesus changes the behavior. We're called new creations. Now, it's also interesting that in Isaiah it says that our righteousness is as filthy rags. Us being right with God is as filthy rags. And that is another way of saying menstrual rags. So our righteousness without Jesus is like an unfertilized egg. Isn't that interesting? Right? Nobody's ever named an unfertilized egg. No woman has ever nursed an unfertilized egg. There's never been a baby room built for an unfertilized egg. It's never been, an unfertilized egg's never had a diaper put on it. An unfertilized egg is not a baby. It's not a child. But if an unfertilized egg accepts the seed of man, oh, then it becomes a new creation. It develops and becomes a baby, becomes a child, becomes an adult with the ability to produce more humans, more children. And so we don't get mad at people when they discard unfertilized eggs. We would call them weird if they kept them, if they named them, if they nursed them, if they made a baby room for an unfertilized egg. So can you judge God for doing the same? If human souls are like unfertilized eggs, because we were disconnected from God, we lost the Spirit of God when Adam and Eve sinned, is it strange that God would disregard humans or discard humans that didn't accept the spiritual seed and become His spiritual children? Would we get mad at God for causing a global flood to kill a bunch of unfertilized souls? No. And here's where Christianity really gets it, that when you read the parables in the New Testament, that's what I recommend you do, you get to see God's perspective. And then you find out that if you were God, which is kind of hard to imagine, but if you knew more, and if you were in God's position, that you would do the same thing because you already do. The reason why I know Christianity is true is because it very plainly points out that if we were God, we would do the same thing, and we already do. We don't keep unfertilized eggs. So it's crazy to expect God to keep unfertilized souls. He cannot relate to them. Do you understand that? I've got 3 children. I love them. We relate to each other. They understand me. They can hear me. They can giggle. They can conversate. The youngest can't, but she tries. But think about that. And is it odd that God created humanity for relationship? And He created us with the ability to reject Him? What happens when an egg rejects the seed? So I hope you'll agree with me that when you think about it in this perspective, this makes a lot of sense. And you've got to really think outside the box, because you're not trained to think like this. We are so trapped in the way that we can see things that we don't notice that things are much bigger than we can sense. And that's why the parables are so important. You should read the Gospels. You should read the New Testament. Don't have an inflated view of yourself. It's so stupid, so illogical that people would say that it's wrong for God to send a global flood and kill all of humanity except for, one family, husband and wife, 3 sons and their 3 wives. Well, they're not God. Yeah, for them to kill humanity would be horrible, right? But God is above humanity. He's in a different position than they are. And so you need to expand your thoughts. You need to see things from God's perspective. And so I hope you'll agree with me by looking at salvation as a born-again situation, a spiritual birth involving a spiritual conception, where you, a spiritual being, must accept the spiritual seed to be valuable. This is very logical. I hope I'm triggering your intuition, and you start to lean toward Christianity and see, oh my, this makes sense. I hope you'll agree with me that the Bible is very logical when it talks about being born again and going through a spiritual birth. I hope you'll reconsider Jesus. Check out my book, 100 Questions Every Christian Should Ask Themselves. It's only 99 cents for the Kindle version. Just try it for 10 days. Do 1 question a day.